Hello, I'm Paul Beckwith. In the last video, when I was skating along the Rideau Canal, which is Canada's largest outdoor skating rink, or the largest one in the world actually, I was discussing, in a rant-like fashion, redrawing the map. How everything is shifting. Tornado Alley is shifting. The 100th Meridional Divide in the North America is shifting. Wheat growing regions are shifting, animals are shifting and migrating. Everything is changing. You know, it used to be that if you wanted to experience a different climate, you would have to move somewhere else, right? But now you don't have to do that anymore. You can just stay in the same location and the climate is shifting under your feet, basically. You know, you don't have to move at all. You're experiencing different precipitation patterns, different temperatures, different seasonality, just by staying in the same place. See, isn't that wonderful? You know, except things are being pushed off of continents because of the geography. For example, the wheat belt in southern Australia is being pushed right off the continent. You know, the fourth largest exporter of wheat in the world will no longer be exporting, you know, in the near future, given the patterns that the climate is shifting to. So I basically did it in a rant-like fashion when I was skating, covered a lot of different things, and in this video, and probably the next few, I'm going to show you the science, the papers, the peer-reviewed papers, the graphs and documents behind the things that I was talking about in the previous video. So let me get right into it here. So this is my blog, paulbeckwith.net, my website. So my editor, David Korn, bless his heart, he said Paul's brilliant video, and he wanted to emphasize, that's not my title, that's his title, editor title. You know, how abrupt climate change is redrawing the map. Okay, so talked about how all of these things are shifting here. So let's go into the nitty-gritty, and please remember my independent climate science joining the dots on what's happening with abrupt climate change, where we are now compared to where we were in the past, and how fast things are shifting. You know, I rely completely on you, the viewer, for donations, for me to be able to do all of this work in educating the public about the grave consequences and risks that we're all facing today from abrupt climate change. So this is my Twitter feed here, at Paul H. Beckwith. I think most of you are probably following me. Whenever I do videos, I tweet it out and I pin them to the top. But here's some recent tweets that, you know, of things that are shifting. So there's Tornado Alley, how it shifted. So 54 to 83, it was here, and now it's actually shifted over here. There's a study talking about extremely cold air masses in the Arctic, not just surface air temperatures, but if you integrate the temperatures up through the atmosphere and see how much cold air you've lost, volume-wise, we've had a drastic reduction by about 80% over the past 60 years, and that's of the coldest temperatures. So I'll show you that particular paper. Ice cover, as you go further and further north, fewer and fewer lakes are not becoming annually covered in ice. Some of them are getting intermittent coverage, other ones are not getting any ice coverage at all. So this has enormous implications, of course, for the chemistry, the physics, the biology of these lakes, and I'll talk about the peer-reviewed paper that discusses that. This is a very, very interesting paper here about shifts. So using the idea of climate analogs, you know, okay, so scientists say average global temperatures will rise 3 degrees Celsius or 4 degrees Celsius, and most of us think that civilization will collapse. It won't be able to withstand temperatures like that. But the general public thinks, well, you know, if I wake up in the morning and it's 0 and it's 20 degrees Celsius in the afternoon, you know, that's a 20-degree temperature change in one day. You know, what does 3 or 4 degrees mean? So this shows you that basically it talks about how, you know, if you live in Washington, D.C. now, what will Washington, D.C.'s climate be like in the future? And this study allows you to say, well, it'll be like this place, southwest of where Washington is right now, you know, a certain temperature, annual temperature change and average, certain precipitation, it'll be like this. So a lot of cities that are in the east will shift to southwesterly states. A lot of cities that are in the southwest will shift more into desert conditions. So it talks about 540 cities in North America and discusses the shift. So I'll talk about that. Of course, I've been saying climate change is a global emergency, so this is good. And here's the joke of the day. A billionaire walks into a bar. Now everyone in the bar is a millionaire on average. Okay, think about it. Also think about this statement. Humans have fewer than 2 legs on average. Okay, think about how averages are calculated and how they apply and can kind of be confusing. Okay, so let's get right back in. So this is my Facebook page here. You know, if you like my videos and you're watching, there's not a lot of space to add people. I've got a couple different Facebook pages here. You can find this one. Anybody can join this one. This one is, I think, I'm restricted to 5,000 people, and I'm up near the limit. But I do go through and, you know, take people out that don't comment or, you know, don't seem that interested, and add people. So if you watch my video, send me a note when you're sending a friend request, and I'll make sure I create room for you. This is an interesting article. Sniffing rosemary can increase memory by 75%. Like, who is Rosemary anyway? I don't know, you know, who's Rosemary? She looks like she has special powers. You know, you sniff rosemary, you can increase your memory. Anyway, yeah, that's a sample of my sense of humor. This is the last video, the rant, how abrupt climate change is redrawing the map. Okay, and now I'm going to do lectures on how this is happening, the diagrams, the science behind it. So that's the previous video that I did. Okay, so redrawing the map. Okay, how the world's climate zones are shifting. Okay, this is an excellent article, Yale Environment 360, that talks about it. So let's have a look at it, basically. So the first thing is the tropics are getting bigger at 30 miles per decade. Okay, so here we have the equator. This is the tropics. This is the subtropics, right? Slightly higher latitudes than the area around the equator. Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn. These are it's 45 degrees between these, 22.5 degrees north, 22.5 degrees south. It's where during the equinoxes, the sun is during the solstices, rather, the sun is directly over, you know, in the northern winter, the sun's directly over here. In the southern winter, the sun's directly over here. Okay, so this is the extent of the sun movement in the solstices. The December and June solstice, the winter solstice, because we're northern hemisphere centric, and the summer solstice, June solstice. Okay, so what's happening is the tropics are expanding by 0.5 degree per decade. That's at degrees latitude. So 0.2 to so the lower band is expanding, going southward about 0.2 to 0.3 degrees per decade, and the northern limit is going north at 0.2 to 0.3 degrees per decade. So the total shift is 0.4 to 0.6 degrees latitude per decade. The tropics are expanding. Now you know that hot air rises. So the hot air rises over the equator, goes upwards, and then it spreads towards the poles, and then it cools down and descends. It descends at about 30 degrees latitude, creating the deserts of the world. This is called the Hadley Cell. So as we get warming at the equator, most of the warming goes into evaporation of water, but there's also, you know, we're reaching areas over land that are reaching that horrendous horrendous 35 degree Celsius, 100% humidity temperature, when, you know, humans can't live outside basically unaided. Okay, your body overheats, you're not able to sweat. So areas of the planet are starting to become become uninhabitable. Okay, so this is the key thing here. The tropics are shifted. You know, many people think of the tropics as rainforest, birds, etc., but the vast majority of our planet's middle region is actually quite dry. The ratio is something like 100 to 1 in area. Okay, only 1% it would be the rainforest and so on. The rest is dry desert. Okay, so we're getting a tropic squeeze. The equatorial region with heavy rains, the intertropical convergence zone, is actually contracting. Okay, people can call it the tropic squeeze. And here we go. The edges of the tropics are moving 0.2 to 0.3 degrees of latitude per decade in both the north and south. So the total change is 0.4 to 0.6. Okay. Mediterranean countries are feeling this. Germany and Britain are becoming drier. Eastern Mediterranean, worst drought in 900 years, and so on. Okay, so the shift in the Hadley Cell is changing. Okay, it's the Hadley Cell characteristics are changing. This also has a big implication on deserts. So the Sahara Desert has gotten 10% bigger since 1920. Okay, so here we see the extent of the Sahara in 1902, in 2013. 1902, 2013. So we're seeing it expanding southward. We're seeing it expanding northward. Okay, and there's also a bit of expansion to the west for this particular chunk. Okay, it's grown 10%. It's advanced as much as 500 miles northward over the winter months in some spots. Okay, so you can see that would be about 500 miles, this distance here, where it's expanded the most in the northward direction. The desert's edges are just, okay, so the Sahara already covers 3.6 million square miles. Okay, that's about how much sea ice is left at the minimum. Okay, the record was below that, what, 3.2 or something. Actually, yeah, something like that. So the desert's edges are defined by rainfall. The line's usually drawn where the ground sees just 4 inches per year. So that's the border that delineates these borders, and we can see that where things are shifting quite large. This affects, you know, if you're a country right on the edge, the Sahel and so on, your ability to grow food is greatly reduced. Okay, and you didn't cause climate change, but you're suffering severely. The limit of where plants could grow in the dry southern edge moved 81 miles to the south in the 10 years between 1980 and 1990. So the progression, the change is not linear. You know, it might be small number of years and then it lurches, it jumps, it's abruptly changing. You know, Libya was mostly not desert in 1920, and now in 2012 it was mostly desert. The line advanced a shocking 500 miles or so. Okay, so that's what I showed you. You know, Lake Chad basically is vanishing. 9,600 square miles in the 70s, 770 in the 90s, and it's going dry. Okay, back to North America, the 100th meridian. Here's the 100th meridian. So 1980, today, 1980, 2000, today. So this is the separation. We've got dry areas here, we've got wetter areas here. The wetter areas are expanding. Okay, so you can see this was first noticed in the 1870s, the idea that there's a rapid transition from the arid west plains of North America to the wetter eastern region. You know, as you drive across there, you see a distinct change in the geography. Okay, luxuriant grasses giving way to naked ground and cacti. Okay, so what we see, so this area is the 100th meridian. That's the longitudinal line. A couple papers on how it is shifted. Okay, so it's actually shifting significantly, and that changes, of course, areas, you know, areas where you can grow. It changes everything. The whole climate is shifting, so it changes the ecology, it changes the critters that live there, it changes what you can grow, changes farming, changes you know, hydrology, water, you know, water amounts and movement and how it interacts with the ground, infiltrates, etc. Everything changes. Okay,